So hi, how's it going, everybody? Is everybody still awake? Got your caffeine? Got your snacks? I saw they had like some popcorn out there. I can't do that. It gets stuck in my teeth. I don't like it. So anyway, today this is the last session, and we're going to be talking about animating Vue with GSAP. And since this is the last session, and I am preventing you from going out to dinner and drinks and having all that fun, my talk is about 3.5 hours, so strap in. I'm just kidding. It's not going to be that long. So anyway, I just want to take a second and recognize how cool it is that we're all here. How many people did the virtual conference last year? Several people? It was okay, right? We tried. You know what I mean? Like we gave the information, but it's not the same vibe as being in a place with all of you guys and, being in Florida or wherever else it is. It's just not the same. So I'm pretty much done with virtual conferences at this point. And so I'm really glad that we're back here and together, and just give yourselves a round of applause for doing that. So who is this guy? Like Jeremy said, I'm from Kansas City. I'm a software engineer at GPS and wearables company Garmin. They make a ridiculous amount of products, and I actually saw one on a boat at the boat slip next to the hotel. I snuck onto that boat and I took a picture of it. So I've worked in a variety of different industries. I've worked in advertising, marketing, and like you said, the craft beer industry. And I believe in 3 things: code, coffee, and metal. I'm a huge metalhead. I love music. All right. What? Slayer! I know what's up. All right. So before I get to this date real quick, back in the day, I started out in design. I wanted to just design websites and just wanted to worry about colors and typography and all that stuff. But then I found an application called Flash. Do we have any OG Flash developers in here? Oh, these are my people. All right. Never be embarrassed for your love of Flash, okay? Flash was awesome. But anyway, I found Flash, and that was really my first foray into programming. I really loved the creativity of it, being able to animate things, going from keyframe to keyframe. And then I dove into ActionScript 2, which led to ActionScript 3, which was all based on modern JavaScript at that time. So, with that said, does anybody know what date this is? Shout it out if anybody knows. Okay, all right. Okay, so this is the date that the iPhone came out. Okay? I remember it very vividly. I was working at a startup company. I was working in Flash, designing these awesome Flash interactive websites that had tons of animation and video. And at that time, probably 90% of video on the web was streamed through Flash. Fast forward a little bit. Does anybody know what this date is? Shout it out. Yeah. Steve Jobs, that guy, he wrote an article on Apple and basically said that Flash is never coming to the iPhone. And overnight, he killed my career. No Flash for you. So, rip Flash. So I had to start over. I had to go back to the drawing board. I had to instantly learn JavaScript, PHP, Rails was really popular at the time, especially in the ad industry for getting things, built up really quick. But I had to pivot, and I had to learn really quickly on how to develop things in a non-Flash environment for a web that was just continuously growing day after day. Eventually, all that video that was streaming over Flash got phased out, and eventually it's just running on the web in HTML5. YouTube was a big part of that. But anyway, when I was in Flash, I used a library called GSAP. And GSAP is the GreenSock animation platform. And back then it was called Tween Lite and Tween Max. But as I evolved as a developer and as the industry evolved in their programming languages and their libraries, GSAP evolved too. It went from originally being an ActionScript only library to being a JavaScript library. So it's an animation platform. It helps developers build out engaging and performant animations. So what can GSAP animate? CSS properties, SVGs, canvas elements, variables, DOM objects, even 3JS objects, which is really cool if you get a chance to look at that. So basically, animate all the things. So why use GSAP over other animation libraries? So one, it's platform agnostic. 63K minified bundle size, so it's relatively small, has 0 dependencies, which is a big one. And if you're still using jQuery, it's 20 times faster than that. I don't know, who's still using jQuery? All right, one or two? All right. Are you just trolling me? All modern browser support, and then I wanted to show off this if it loads real quick. So this is a speed test, and this is a little application that the guys at GSAP wrote, and it basically shows you the frame rates. So we're getting 91, 85 frames per second for 1,000 objects. It's pretty good. So let's bump it up a little bit. Let's do 2,500. Just see what that does. Okay, so it's like about 30 frames a second. That's still really good for that many objects. And look, if you look at the bottom, there's no overdue animation. So every single one of those individual animations is actually firing and completing on time. So there are other animation libraries out there. I got a buddy of mine who's probably going to see this later. His name's Jordan, and he's a big anime JS guy. And I'm going to see how his platform works. Oh, 30 frames a second. Not as good. Jordan, you should switch to GSAP if you're watching this. Okay, so anyway, enough trolling. Okay, so requirements. So you can install it via NPM. You can use a CD link. You could download the zips. And all you really need is some basic JavaScript knowledge. This is a paid platform, but there are certain parts of it that are free. So the basic animation libraries you can use, but it has a whole list of plugins that you can use to do certain things. Animation, physics engines, text and type transforms to get some of those like old school Flash vibes that you can get where all the text is flowing around and stuff. I love that stuff. Okay, so super simple to import, just npm install and then import GSAP into your library. This is another helper that GreenSock, this is the GreenSock site. Oh, I should also preface this. I don't work for GreenSock. I have no affiliation with these people whatsoever. I tweet at them every once in a while, but I'm not here like promoting their stuff. I'm just a big fan of it. So anyway, they have this really cool instant helper that you can go through, and let's say I want the flip one and scroll to and text, and it'll just give you the code that you can just copy and paste directly into your application. Okay, so there's 3 basic GSAP methods. There is a to, there is a from, and there is a to from. So the 3 basic parts of that method, you have the selector, or the element that you're wanting to animate, the params object, which is a whole list of instructions. It could be CSS, it could be X and Y coordinates, it could be opacity, it could be anything. And then the position on the timeline, and I'll get to the position in a minute here. The 3 elements are to, so you have a current position, it's going to somewhere else. From, where you give it the starting point and it ends at the beginning. And then to from, where you're actually passing 2 objects and giving it the 2 variables and the from variables, excuse me. Okay, so a two-method example. So here's a basic tween. You have GSAP, given it a class. So you can use jQuery style selectors. You can use classes, you can use IDs, and you can use rest, which is what I'll actually show here in a minute. But you give it a duration, you know, an X of 100, and then you can use different eases on it. And I'll go over the eases in a second, but they're basically the jQuery ones that you remember. So we're setting that all to a tween variable. Now, if you set it to a variable, that function isn't going to fire immediately. So we have some helper functions to allow us to control that timeline or that tween. You have the pause, seek, which will send you to a certain point in that. So this is a duration of 5. So if you seek 2, it'll go 2 seconds into that animation and stop. Progress, and then play. So play will just start it and go. So they also have this really cool visualizer for eases. So let's say you don't exactly know how you want your animation to slow down or speed up based on the timeline. You can actually go through here and it'll show you exactly how that ease is gonna show up. I'm a big fan of the back one because it's got this kind of overarching and then it kind of slowly fades in. But again, this is a helper, so it allows you to copy and paste that ease really easily. Okay, so the other big concept, aside from just basic tweens, is timelines. You can have a collection of tweens all in one timeline and then run them accordingly. So instead, at the top, you can see that you've got 3 tweens, and they do very similar stuff, but the key thing is that delay object, or delay parameter, excuse me, toward the back. So I have a delay of 1 on the second one, so it waits for that first one to finish, then it fires the second one with a delay of 1, and then it fires the second one on a delay of 2. But I don't want to do that. That's like, why would I do that? So you use a timeline. You create a new variable, you create a timeline, give it a couple parameters, and then you add new tweens to that. And this is where that third parameter in that function comes in, is this little object right here, if I highlight it right there. So this actually gives you where you want it to start on the timeline. So negative equals would be 0.5 seconds into the previous ease. So you've got your first one, it'll start, and then as that next one's going, the next one will start. And I have an example of this that I'll show here in a little bit. But also with that are those same kind of tween methods that allow you to control a single tween, are the same thing with timelines. You're allowed to play, stop, pause, reset, replay, things like that. Okay, so GSAP also comes with a variety of utility methods that I find really handy, and so maybe you don't need that Lodash package at all. So to generate random numbers, so you can actually snap it to increments if you wanted to by passing in that third parameter. So let's say you wanted something between 0 and 500 with increments of 5. Boom, you can do that, and it'll give you that random number. Oh, I'm sorry, the incrementing is the fourth parameter, excuse me. One of the other utility methods that I find really helpful is this shuffle. So let's say you have an array or an object or something and you want to randomize it. You just do this util shuffle and it'll return a shuffled array. And then snapping. So you can actually snap objects. If let's say you have a decimal point in your function that you're calculating width of the page or something, then you can use the snap tool to snap it to a specific pixel width. Okay, so that's a little bit about GSAP. Now we're going to actually look at how it works in Vue. Excuse me. Okay, so again, I started out as a designer. I do not consider myself a designer now. So these animations are going to be very basic, and I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, why am I using this utility if I could just use CSS animations? Okay, fair enough. Some CS animations I totally understand, but when you have like this giant timeline and it just gets messy, so I like doing it in JavaScript, excuse me, and just completely taking out the CSS animations and have that just for styling and not animations. So on this home page, let's reload it here. Okay, simple fade in, right? Let's look how we did that. So we're gonna need, here's the markup, and I just have a div with an H1 and a couple paragraphs in it, but I give it a ref of content right here. Can you guys see this at all? Do I need to blow it up? Yes? All right. Enhance. Enhance. Okay. So I'm using the script setup tag. I need the ref and onMounted. So the refs only work for the selectors through onMounted, so I need that. I've imported GSAP. I've got my refs for container and content. And then down here on onMounted, I've got a from tween that I'm passing in that container value, giving it a delay, a duration. The quotes with the plus are whatever its current Y position is plus that number. So this is, whatever it is plus 100. And then this is one of my favorite parameters, is this auto alpha. So it automatically toggles visibility and opacity at the same time. So I don't have to do two variables at once. And then again, that back out ease. So you get something kind of like that. Very simple. So the next one, see, doesn't that take you back to some Flash days? Slide ins and slide outs. I love it. All right, so we're gonna look at the timeline here. And instead of using just a container, I have refs on each one of these elements, these HTML elements. I'm just gonna close that. So again, we're doing it onMounted. I've got my refs here. I've got my timeline. I've set it to delay and pause, so to make sure that it doesn't fire until I want it to. And then set up the different tweens. So all I'm doing is alternating in the X value and changing that auto alpha. But if I wanted to change color or font size or anything like that, I could definitely do that. And then just hitting play. So again, very nice. But what if I didn't want to do that? Let's go back to this home example and let's update it. So along with value, you could target the children of the container that you're actually doing. And they have this nifty little stagger object, and let's do 0.25. So what this is going to do, I hope, let's see if it works. Didn't work. Oops. Let me check this. I have the wrong thing. There we go. I had the wrong container. So what this allows you to do is have like a parent container and then animate all the children underneath it with the same tween style. That stagger is how often you want it to fire when the tween plays. So if I wanted to do, let's say, a form or a whole list of paragraph tags for a blog post or something like that, you could definitely do that. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between a regular tween and a timeline. So if you really want very fine details of a tween and how things should actually animate, I would suggest using a timeline. But if you don't really care and you just want to grab all the objects and say, fade in, then you can do it this way too. So the next thing we're going to look at is composables. So let's say you have some animations that you want to use on multiple objects on multiple components. So for this, we built out this composable. So you're using this on mounted and you're using on before route leave. So you're going to fire a function right before you leave that page. So again, very, very basic. We're just animating this element value. And so we're going to pass that in when we instantiate that. And then on route leave, we're going to do the exact same thing. But the big thing is this onComplete. So there's an onComplete function that you can fire at the end of a tween to make sure that the tween is actually finished before moving on. And then we're just calling next. So the router knows, okay, go ahead and move on to the next page. So for this, it just slides in and out. But it's the exact same code on all three of these pages. And let's look at what it actually takes. That's it. Just the ref, importing the composable, and then firing that and passing the element into that function. So you can do this on multiple pages and have those page transitions happen on any component that you want. Okay. Let's look at the next part of it, which is transitions. So has everybody seen the transition in Vue and used those? Normally those are done with CSS, but instead we're going to use GSAP for these. So if we look at here, let me blow this up just a little bit. So we've got a transition. We've got before enter and enter. So those are two different functions that are going to fire during the life cycle of that. But the key is having the CSS false and then appear. So you want that to want these functions to automatically fire when they appear. And again, I've got just very basic. I'm using another utility method to actually set the before variables, so the scale and the auto alpha. Let me put this again. So again, it just looks like it's kind of like rising out from the middle of it, and that's it. Very simple and a lot less code than CSS transitions. So the next one is actually a transition component. So we created a new transition component here. Let me pull this up. And we've basically done the exact same thing, except we've given it a slot. So now what we can do is we can pass in another piece of content or anything into that slot, and that transition will animate it. So again, we're doing the exact same thing. We're setting the variable on before enter, we're animating it on enter, and then on leave, which I actually don't have in this example. The first part of it should fire. So again, just scaling up from the middle. Now let's look how I actually implemented that. So right now I've got my import using the transition there, and then I have my transition component here, and then I've got the container just dropped into it. So you could use that in any component that you would want. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you is actually tweening numbers. So right now we've just got a basic counter. So you click once and you have the original, and it increments properly, but what if you wanted to animate that transition? So one of the ideas that I had for this would be a loader or some kind of stat from the Vuex store or the Pina store. I should have said Pina, sorry. You're not supposed to say Vuex anymore. It's like a bad word. So let's look how we did that. Okay, so I've got a reactive data object here that has a number and a tween number. I've got the increase count, which is just increasing it by 10. And it could be literally anything. And then I have a watch on that data object. And so what I'm doing is then firing this tween and passing in the data object .num, so that would be the number. And then what you have to do is you actually have to target the object and not necessarily the individual reference. And that then applies down here where we are actually going to be tweening with that new number from the previous watch. And then, did I use that? I didn't use that. I should have deleted that. And so right now I only have the duration of 0.5, but if I bump that up, you can see how fast it goes. And the cool thing about this is you can also apply easing to it too. So if you wanted it to bounce and kind of randomly look random, you could do that as well. Oh yeah, absolutely. So right now, like I've just got it set to 100. Get back to my slides here. Okay, so the whole point of this, and I know there's been a lot of talk of testing and a lot of talk about code clarity and, just as a creative. Well, let me ask you this. How many people are in the audience that consider themselves creatives? Okay, fair enough, right? In my personal opinion, over the last probably 10 years, a lot of coding has been so rigid and so structured that we haven't had the chance to play. And that's one of the things that I really love about GSAP and Vue especially, is because it does have those structures, but it allows you to just play and have fun and be a kid again. So I encourage you to try GSAP. Really any animation library, get back to your roots, do some creative coding. There's some resources out there. So the greensock.com is a great resource for anything and all things GSAP. The documentation is fantastic. And if you ever really want to see the power of GSAP, go to the GreenSock Showcase. The showcase on their website has some unbelievably cool websites on there. I'm sure if Homer was here, I don't know if he is. He is back there. Their accessibility is probably terrible. I'm sorry. But we're making text move and we're making pictures move and we're making things, fly around the screen. So they're probably cool websites, but they're probably not accessible. But you could fix that. There's ways to do it. And then the other thing is the Creative Coding Club. Now, I am not in any affiliation with these people either. But if you guys are familiar with Vue School and Vue Mastery, this is that for GSAP. So if you are really interested in animating and with JavaScript, then there's a platform that you can learn all kinds of things on. And I've been a subscriber for a while. It's a really great platform, and you do learn a whole lot. So thank you very much for VueConf. I am JD Hillen. You can find me on all the social platforms. You can find the animation slides and the feature project at links.jdhillen.com. It's got all the things on there. So if you have any questions or see me around, hit me up, let me know. And don't forget to be creative. Thank you.
As far as accessibility goes for animations, you're supposed to have like on-off buttons to like stop animations for like low motion and stuff.
Right.
They're like globally, like through like GSAP.off or something like that. Is there a way to globally turn it off?
Yeah. That would be in the GSAP docs. They actually have a really cool dev playground that allows you to set variables like that for all your tweens.